Welcome back. If you're new here, genuinely and warmly welcome. My name's Joanne Avison, and this is a podcast about fascia, movement, and the deeper intelligence of the living body. And in this series, it's inherent sacred geometry. So if you've been here for a while, thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for your comments, your questions, your reflections. I answer every single one of them, and I want you to know that. It takes me hours, and I do it gladly, because what's happening in the comments of this series, it's not just feedback, it's a conversation, and it's a real one. And that matters enormously to me, because it turns this into a story circle, a sort of conversation rather than a broadcast. And I honestly love that. Thank you. I appreciate you. Several of you wrote to me to say thank you for going back to the beginning. Thank you for the calm. Thank you for the patience, or the integration of ideas and the wisdom behind the words. And one of you asked very simply, please, could you explain the geometry? And this whole series exists because of that question. So here we are together, still going. And now in episode 0, we began with nothing, with 0, with the empty circle, the monad, the space before anything exists or arises. The wish, you might say, out of nowhere, the nothingness from which somethingness emerges, if indeed it does. That question is allowed to hang in the air for a moment, because that quality of open possibility, of potential before form, before the explanation, is exactly what 0 holds. And in episode 1, the second in the series, because the first was episode 0, we met the geometry of the first of the 5 Platonic volumes, which was the tetrahedron. 4 points, the minimum geometry of something in 3-dimensional space. And it represents the element of fire, which is symbolic of transformation. Now, symbolically, that is more than a triangle into space. It's the movement from surface into volume, from 2 dimensions into 3, from an idea into a form that can be held, or, to put it more accurately, that can hold itself in space and time. And I want you to think about that just for a moment, about what that episode was as an experience, and consider for a nanosecond what it feels like for us all to gather as a collective around a fire, which is symbolically what we did. Fire is somehow the oldest invitation, and long before we had words for what we're doing, human beings came together in the dark and sat close to the flame. In some traditions, that gathering had a particular quality. The fire was at the centre. Everyone faced it. Everyone was held by the same light and the same warmth. What was spoken there was spoken to the whole circle, not to one person, to all. It's transformative on many levels, and a theme we're going to take into later episodes. Consider here that fire is much more than a triangle, as a triangle in volume is much more than a shape. There is a tradition, and I want to be careful here because I'm paraphrasing something I've encountered rather than a source I can cite precisely. But the essence of it is this. In certain northern cultures, the children of the community are invited to sit around the fire at night and speak their fears and worries and stories of the day aloud. Not to be corrected, not to be advised, simply to be heard by the tribe or by their family. The fire would take those fears as fire takes everything and transforms them. And the children go to sleep unburdened. I share this because as a child, my mother insisted every night at 7 that our family sat round the table where candles were lit and food was served, and that we took it in turns to tell our stories. And I have to say, as a teenager, it drove me nearly mad. I always wanted to be in the library, but Mum wasn't having it. She insisted we all sat together once a day, shared our respective day with each other. No phones, no TV, no distractions, just a family circle surrounding a tender flame and sharing. I need to take back all my whinges and say thank you, I think, because we remain a close and loving family, and it makes the world of a difference to each of us. Since my beloved dad passed away 7 years ago, God bless him. He was the best storyteller ever. So candles rather than fires, But the idea is dear to me, and I invite you to sit with me a while and share your thoughts if you get a moment. I promise to answer them. That encircling is what fire can do. That is what this first of the 5 Platonic volumes, the Tetrahedron, represents. It's transformation through being witnessed through warmth and connection in space and time and spirit, through the irreducible minimum of being together on the same ground. 4 points held in relationship. That is where we were. Now we need to notice the ground. A fire needs somewhere to be built, a place to base its foundation. And before you can gather, before you can light the flame, before the stories can begin, someone has to clear a space. Symbolically, the earth has to be prepared accordingly, and the fire pit has to be built that will hold what the flame becomes and keep the whole gathering safe and in place. That is what we're doing in this episode. We are meeting the hexahedron. We're coming home to earth. You'll see why if you gather round and let this next shape tell its story for you. The hexahedron is the cube. It has 6 faces, 8 vertices, and 12 edges. Every face is a perfect square. Every angle is a perfect right angle. Every edge is exactly the same length. You may be familiar with a Rubik's cube, which is a cube made of cubes, and every single cube has the same geometry, equal edges, perfect right angles, and square faces. Every cube has 6 of those. Now, where the tetrahedron was a symbol of fire, all upward reach and transforming point, the hexahedron is, in a way, making an opposite gesture. It is ground, it is stability. It is the form that uniquely amongst the 5 Platonic volumes can fill space completely without gaps, without overlaps, without remainder. There's no wasted space, no awkward leftover geometry. This ability to pack into each other or pack together is called tessellation. It literally means tiling. Like your bathroom or kitchen tiles tessellate. They don't need to be square, but their shape matters when they're laid side by side and tessellated, meaning tiled. The cube tessellates, which is the mathematical term for that quality of fitting together or locking together without gaps. And it's the only one of the 5 regular polyhedra that does so in 3 dimensions. Every single aspect of this shape tessellates. No side or corner is an exception. And this is why we built our world from it. Almost every room you've ever stood in, and almost every building or brick, every tile, every screen you're watching this on, the architecture of the human-made world is fundamentally cubic or rectangular. A rectangle is an elongated cube, really. And in both cases, there are right angles at every corner, straight lines, flat spaces, 90-degree corners at all points. The cube is the geometry of how we construct things from the outside in. Now, here is the pivot that matters, the one that this whole series is kind of built on or built towards. It is not the geometry of how we grow. We do not have any right angles anywhere in our architecture. Let that land, because it's a key to understanding the next in our series. We actually form via the geometry of this cube, stay with me. However, we are never at any point becoming cubic or cuboid in nature. Humans and animals and all non-linear biologic living creatures, everything organic on this planet, never forms in cubes. Even crystals that appear to do that don't really. It's a definition for hard matter physics that doesn't belong in the soft matter physics of living organisms, which is a fundamental error of biomechanics, just so you know. Now, take a moment with that distinction, because the world we built around ourselves is cubic. It tessellates, it fills space without gaps. It is extraordinarily efficient for the purposes of construction. We begin with parts and create things by methods of putting those parts together. The body we inhabit grew from something else entirely. It began whole and complete, and within the wholeness, it specialized into what we call parts. We're not constructed from the outside in. We're not assembled from parts. We self-organize from within, from a single cell, as a living unicellular being in the round, self-organizing outward according to principles that are older than any architecture a human hand has ever made. Now, those principles, as we will see, are based on roundness. They are rounder, more fluid, more dynamically responsive than any right angle could ever be. However, we're not there yet. First, let's go deep on what we are not and find out how the cube is actually part of our organisation process, although not our shape. Before we arrive at that distinction, before we celebrate what we're not, I want to honour what the cube is, because the hexahedron is not like wrong or the villain of this story. It is a profound and beautiful form, and it appears in the body in ways that matter deeply. But let us go back to the very beginning. Jaap van der Waal, the Dutch embryologist, whose work I return to again and again in this series, describes us at our earliest moment as a unicellular being, one cell, a sphere. The monad made literal and spherical. 0 and 1 simultaneously, just as we explored in episode 0. That one cell becomes 2 daughter cells. 2 becomes 4, and 4 at the third multiplication, the moment van der Waal and others consider one of the most significant thresholds in human development, becomes 8. That is not division, that is multiplication, even though it's called division in embryology. This is something I feel quite strongly about naming correctly, because we've inherited the language of cell division, which frames the process as something splitting apart, reducing, breaking down. That is not what's happening. What is happening is multiplication. One becomes more while remaining one. The wholeness elaborates. It does not fragment. It grows and includes all. It is by nature an inclusive expansion and multiplication. Regardless of the culture we've inherited about embryology, we do not divide down into more. That doesn't make sense. We multiply and unify constantly. This is not divide and conquer. And at this point we're talking about of 8 cells, something extraordinary is visible. Those 8 cells, each one a perfect sphere, arrange themselves in a cluster for a nanosecond of time. If you hold that cluster of 8 spheres in 3 dimensions, their centres describe the 8 vertices of a cube. The early architecture of the human body is the hexahedron, which it includes and transcends almost instantly. We do not merely live in a world of cubes. We began as a monad and had a moment as a form that iterated a cube as it passed onward to the next form, which it also transcends. So before the rounding, before the elaboration, before the infinite polyhedral genius of the living fascial matrix took over and carried us toward the icosahedron and beyond, there was this moment, 8 points held together, the egg of life, the seed of life in its 2D rendering, the cube in its 3D representation. That is symbolic of the body's ground substance, the body's earth. Earth, ground, the first holding. Remember, we pass through this. However, we know it as an iteration of our form. And there's one more thing I want to bring in here, because this is where the geometry stops being abstract and becomes something you can feel. The tetrahedron has 4 vertices. The hexahedron has 8. It doubles. 4 becomes 8. This is not merely symbolic. It's geometrically precise. A regular tetrahedron fits inside a cube. Its 4 vertices touch exactly 4 of the cube's 8 corners. The fire sits inside the earth. The gathering happens around the fire within the ground that was prepared for it. Remember, we're speaking a symbolic language here in geometry. The 4 points of the transformation are held, contained, and given a home by the 8 points of stability. Fire and earth are not opposites or in opposition. They're nested, one inside the other, one making the other possible. And in a way, these are the nested hierarchies of the human body that make sense of the latest science we're discovering. They precede the nervous system or any other system in our architecture. That's a conversation for another day, but let's stay simple and find a deep respect for the cube and its role in the process of incorporating sacred geometry. Let's meet the hexahedron properly as a body. So the hexahedron has 6 faces. Each one is a perfect square. Every internal angle is exactly 90 degrees, 12 edges, all the same length, 8 vertices where 3 faces meet at each corner. It is, in a precise sense, the most stable of the 5 Platonic volumes. Now, where the tetrahedron reaches upward into space from a triangular base, the cube rests, it sits. It does not lean or point or transform. It holds with equal force in all directions. And that quality of holding is expressed in the body at a scale most people have never considered. At the microscopic level within the fascial matrix, there is an element of connective tissue called the endomysium. It wraps each individual muscle fibre, every single one, in a sleeve of collagen that organises itself in a pattern of near perpendicular crossings, not quite 90 degrees, because nothing in the living body is quite 90 degrees, but approaching it, approximating it, honouring the principle of it, while remaining alive and responsive and adaptive rather than rigid. The cube's geometry is present in the body, but not as a fixed structure, as a tendency, a sort of constraint that limits us and invites us to stay contained. It's a principle the tissue reaches toward while never becoming locked into it. The body knows the cube. It began by moving through and beyond the geometry of the cube, but it carries the memory of that form in its kind of microscopic architecture. It simply refuses wisely and beautifully to be imprisoned or locked in by it. And this brings us to the kind of the heart of what the hexahedron teaches. The cube is the geometry of the world we built around ourselves, the rooms, the buildings, the screens, the furniture, the flat surfaces we rest our living, rounded, spiralling, dynamically unstable bodies upon and against every day of our lives. But there's a kind of comedy in this, if you're willing to see it. We are liquid crystal architectures of extraordinary geometric sophistication, spending our days sitting in boxes, looking at rectangles, walking on flat planes, sleeping on flat surfaces, being measured and assessed and described against grids as if we were made of right angles. Have you ever been assessed in front of a grid to see if you're aligned? I teach body reading. I'm pretty good at it, and that horrifies me. I mean, what is the point of making someone wrong for not being something that they're much more than? For heaven's sake, you're not designed to be a square, stable box. Trees are alive, dynamic, and stable, and we are designed for and as dynamic instability, dynamic adaptability, dynamic versatility and vitality. A moment of equipoise, like the embryonic nanosecond we found ourselves including and transcending the 8 corners of the centres of our first iterations at the 3rd multiplication of our forming moment. You did that. It may sound complex, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Every single being on this planet passed that 3rd moment of multiplication from 2 to 4 to 8 to become themselves. They passed through that geometry, beyond that stability, into the dynamics of us. We're not legitimately judged by right angles. How can we be? We approximate, we adapt, we accommodate, we are extraordinarily good at functioning within the cubic world because we're built to respond to whatever geometry surrounds us. That responsiveness is itself a form of genius. It's not our native geometry, however. It's not the language in which we're written. It's our adaptability at work. We are written in roundness, in spirals, in triangulated tensional networks that distribute force continuously throughout the whole architecture, without a single right angle anywhere in our primary structure, not one, anywhere, ever. It baffles me how inappropriate the biomedical use of prosthetic limbs and bolts and pins that follow right angles really is. Thank God I've been fortunate enough to meet young engineers designing more intelligent ways of helping us move when we get broken. Pray for them and watch the movie A Dolphin's Tale to get what I mean. It's all in there. And they're mammals too, right? Anyway, I digress. The cube was a moment during our beginning. 8 cells, the egg of life, the first holding pattern. Then we grew beyond it into something far more fluid, far more alive, far more round. That growing beyond is not a rejection of the cube, it's a graduation from it while containing its values. Earth is where we settle for a short while after we begin, but it's not where we stay. We move on to the next exquisite architecture that honours, in a way, the tetrahedron and the hexahedron at the next frequency. You'll see what I mean in the next episode, and it's worth waiting for because it gives us the importance of 3 from the triangle and 6 from the cube to the middle one of the 5 platonic solids that we're going to move on to in the next episode. And that's the one that's really key to our structure. But before we close, I want to give you something to take into your body rather than just your mind. Find your feet on the ground for a moment wherever you are. Feel the surface beneath you flat, level, and probably at right angle to the walls around you, the cubic world, holding you as it does. And now notice that your feet are not flat. Your arches rise, your toes splay slightly or long to. The contact between your living body and the flat ground is a negotiation. It's a kind of constant, intelligent, moment-by-moment conversation between your rounded, spiralling, tensional architecture and the right-angled stability of the earth beneath you. You are not the cube. You are what stands on it, what grew from it, what carries the memory of those first 8 cells in every piece of connective tissue, and all of your cells and all of yourselves. It's part of your geometrical and archetypal and architectural beginning. Feel into it and feel the roundness before we move forward to the next frequency, the next iteration of form in our archetypal geometries. Earth is not a limitation. It's the ground of the story. It's what makes the gathering possible. It's the fire pit that holds the flame so we can sit round it together and tell and hear these stories. So in our next episode, we're going to meet the 3rd of the 5 Platonic volumes. That one is, in many ways, the heart of this whole series. It's the volume that comes closest to the sphere, the one that can behave as a liquid crystal, the one that lives most naturally in water and in us, and the watery nature of us. It's worth the wait. It's the one that deserves a series of its own. However, I will keep it simple and cover all 5 Platonic solids in this series, and we'll move on to the next series where we're going to honour some of the great minds that understood this archetypal foundation of geometry, because it allows us all to move better, live longer with more vitality. That next episode is based on number 3, the Holy Trinity of the icosahedron. The icosahedron has 20 faces, 12 vertices, 30 edges. Each face is an equilateral triangle, and 5 of those triangular faces meet at every vertex. That meeting of 5, rather than the 3 or the 4 that characterise these last 2 volumes, is part of what gives the icosahedron its extraordinary quality of roundness. None of its faces tessellate. They flow rather than lock. It's the geometry of water. The only one of the 5 Platonic volumes that can behave as a liquid crystal. The one that approaches a sphere at high frequency. The cellular and fascial incorporation of this form in the human body and in every living creature, in all their variation, is profound. After fire and earth, we honour the water of life, the living primordial sea that we contain within us, that we're all made of, that allows us to be alive at all on this planet. We take that ocean with us wherever we go, as we live among the trees with whom we share our exquisite geometry. I will see you there.